Okay folks, quick revision video on how far Hitler put Germany back to work. If you remember some of the earlier videos I did when I was looking at the background of the Nazis coming to power, I said how in the 1920s Germany had a recovery in the middle of it, largely due to American loans, which came in because of the Dawes Plan, which allowed them to basically loan money from America, pay Britain and France back, and then that would allow Britain and France to one day to be able to pay America back for the loans they had from World War One, and also Germany would eventually be paying America back as well. And we know that the stock market crash and depression happened in the USA, and they could no longer lend their money to Germany. And because of this, I said it was like the analogy of someone pulling the plug on the German economy, and Germany went into the depression, basically with people losing jobs, losing houses, losing investments, etc. So Hitler used this. This was a key reason why people were willing to back the Nazis, and I cover this in the video about Hitler becoming Chancellor. But basically, unemployment had reached about 6 million people by the time 1933 turns, January 1933, and because everybody else in the world pretty much is affected by the depression, nobody will loan or is able to loan Germany the money to do anything about it. So Hitler actually, one of his things he did was he used to borrow phrases from the communists a little bit, and he basically promises bread and land, in other words food and somewhere for you to work and live. So bread, land, jobs are promised by Adolf Hitler, and the key two which you should take from that are bread and jobs, because bread obviously would translate to food on the table, but jobs would mean a variety throughout society that would basically provide money and allow you to have your roof over your head and your land. So what did Hitler do? Well, basically he starts off and he rearms Germany. As you know, the German army was forbidden to be over 100,000 men in strength by the Treaty of Versailles, and what he basically does is he brings in conscription and he basically rearms Germany. And we've looked at that and how he did that in the foreign policy videos. But a rearmed Germany also meant that the goods had to be made to supply this rearmed Germany as well, so that would have impact on the steel industry, the textile industry, etc. He also would build motorways, which I'm going to touch on shortly, and he also wanted to make Germany self-sufficient. In other words, he wanted this policy of autarky, which is spelled A-U-T-A-R-K-Y, and the idea would be Germany had lost World War One because they had run out of supplies, or running low on supplies, and the ports were blockaded and stopped like vital fertilizers and the like coming in, and this meant that Germany couldn't look after itself enough and couldn't produce enough to continue the war. So Hitler didn't want this to happen, so he was determined to have a self-sufficient Germany. And the idea was basically exactly the same as Roosevelt's in America. If people's got jobs, people's got pay, and if people's got pay, people will have money, and if they've got money in their pocket, people will spend the money, and if people are spending the money, they are buying the goods, and by buying the goods it creates a demand for more goods, so more have to be made in industry, which results in more jobs, which results in more pay, which results in basically more being bought, but also people with jobs and money can be taxed, and the tax will go back to the government, and then that will fund the rearmament program, motorway programs, public work programs, and making Germany self-sufficient. So it's basically a cycle of prosperity that we have looked at with America a little bit as well. So he brings in this idea called the Reichsarbeitsdienst, or the RAD, or the National Labour Service, as it translates to. And basically it's pretty much identical to an idea that Roosevelt has in America, and the idea is that men would be given jobs in public work schemes. So, you would build drainage ditches, you would build schools, you would build the motorways, you would plant forests, you would improve agriculture. And the idea was that men would live in camps, so they'd have the roof over their heads, they therefore wouldn't be homeless, they'd be provided with their food, and they wouldn't have to pay for the food, and they would get pocket money at the end of the week. So you wouldn't get like a high wage because you're getting your roof over your head and free food. But it stops the unemployment issue, and it also means that it stops homelessness, because men have got jobs to do which are keeping them, like basically in a camp with a roof over their head. Very interestingly, the Reichsarbeitsdienst, the National Labour Service, the men had to wear uniforms and live it, like basically be disciplined, which, if you think about it, is very close to what Hitler would ultimately want when he's creating an army. He wants obedience, and he wants men who will follow his lead. And there's pictures of the RAD. There was one on an exam paper years ago, and they're basically men who are marching, sound like the army, with their shirts off, looking physically fit, and their shovels are being carried almost exactly the same as you would carry a rifle when the army's marching. So you can see what he was trying to get out of this as well. So the public works programme would basically, by creating these things like motorways, schools, drainage ditches, agriculture, etc., would improve the everyday living conditions of people in Germany. Obviously they were building buildings, so when you have a new building, you're proud, you look after it, it's something for you to aspire to. So if you think about it, when you get the new school, you don't see people trashing the new schools now, like our building, like you might have elsewhere, because it's something to look after, it's something new, it's something, we've got this, let's look after it, we're proud of it, and people have a bit of excitement about it. Same back in the 90s when, there was a lot of public work programmes and money ploughed into Newcastle. The city was lifted. It totally lifted the face of the city, it lifted the character of the city, and people became proud of what they were from. If you look at like early episodes of Our Wiedersehen Pet in the 1980s, I guarantee you are not getting the same image of Newcastle that you would get now, something that was competing for a City of Culture, a Capital of Culture award. It was murky, it was grim. No one was proud of it really at all, unless you were like someone who really loved the place. Hitler wanted improved public transport networks, so people, again, these would have to be built, so it would create jobs. But also it means, for example, the autobahns created, the motorway system which links all of Germany up. So yeah, that's great to transport your industrial goods from one place to another when you need them. But in the event of a war on two fronts, such as France and Russia, who Hitler had already identified as enemies, Germany could get across from one side to the other pretty quickly. So the autobahn with no speed limit on it, this huge network of motorways, would be very handy if you faced a war on two fronts, which is Germany's constant thorn in its side. And when all of this happened, it would kickstart this cycle of prosperity, which is what Hitler was wanting. Money in pockets, money gets spent, buy goods, more goods created, more jobs created, eventually can be taxed, and keep it going. Now, as I've mentioned, Germany ran out of vital goods like fertilizers, war materials, food, etc., and had to, surrender in World War I. So Hitler is determined for this method of self-sufficiency or autarky to happen, and basically he's putting scientists to work, and they're looking at all sorts of creations. So like Germany wants to find petrol from coal, and even go as far as creating coffee from acorns. So everything would be in Germany what people would want. And it would also, these new substitutes meant that basically the unemployed would have jobs in these new industries producing these goods. Now, just like white America boomed in the 20s, Hitler realizes the power of the car industry. So basically, Volkswagen, which you might have heard of, is means people's car, right? And Hitler was, has taken credit, rightly or wrongly, for the design of the Volkswagen Beetle, which is very, very similar, by the way, to the Kubelwagen Jeep, which was produced for the war effort in World War II. So you could very much switch a car industry over to a weapons industry in the event of war. So it did help them having this booming car industry in that respect as well. But Car's idea was that you would produce them low cost, just like Ford in America. People's got a new good, a vital product, you know, like a car, something that could change your life. It's something you would aspire to have, hope to have. So it makes people happier. If you're getting these new goods and you can afford them and you can live this better lifestyle, people are happier with the government. So he figured, right, produce cars at a low cost. Obviously it's going to help the war effort if they do go into war, to produce this, you know, switch everything from car production to military vehicles. But just think back to Ford in the USA. If you're going to produce cars to be sold, you're going to affect steel, rubber, leather, glass. All those industries are going to be booming to produce cars to meet a new demand. So the car industry, just like America in the 20s. Other things you should bear in mind. Jews were sacked from their jobs. So by 1934, Jews were sacked from public jobs at the civil service. These jobs were given to German workers, and then if you were a Jew, you didn't count towards the unemployment statistics in Germany. So he removed the Jews as from jobs, but then they didn't count. They didn't count towards any statistics. A lot of women's jobs were given to men as well, and if you refused a job, so for example, if you didn't have a job and you were told to go into the Reichsarbeitsdienst, the National Labour Front, and you said no, you would be arrested, disappear, and you'd go into a concentration camp. And the outcome of that would be, again, people in concentration camps didn't count towards any unemployment statistics. So when Hitler comes to power in 1933, there's over 6 million people unemployed. Within a year, he's almost half that. And by the time World War II would start in 1939, the unemployment statistics have gone from just over 6 million to 302,000 people unemployed. So make your own mind up on how far he cured the unemployment situation in Germany, but there's some facts to help you out if you get asked that question on the exam.